So we have Ankush Bhatt and we have Vedant Patil as our panelists today. Ankush Bhatt and Vedant both joined Tricentis in the month of April last year, and they are extremely talented guys who are delivering end-to-end functionality for our customers. They both are test architects, and they have a great track record of implementing best practices, implementing and delivering trainings to our customers and partners all over the globe, not only in India. So I welcome Ankush and Vedant, and I will now request you to take over the session, and please, I will move on to you.
Thanks, Jaswant, for the warm welcome. Thanks for those kind words. Maybe can you stop sharing the screen? I'll start share.
Sure, sure. You can make yourself a presenter, or let me know if you want me to make you a presenter.
I think you need to make me the presenter.
Fine. I have made you a presenter. You can now share your screen.
Yeah. So is my screen visible?
Yes, Ankush, yes.
Yes, Ankush, that's visible.
Okay, great.
We can see you as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So hope you are doing good in these challenging times. So today I have with me Vedant Patil also, who we are going to discuss about the Tosca, Tricentis Tosca initial project setup, that how we basically do the initial project setup at different customers, what are the initial challenges that we face, and how we're gonna rectify those, and what are the best practices that we basically follow while we're doing the initial project setup. So yeah, over to Vedant.
Sure. Thanks, Ankush, and thanks, Jaswant, for the introduction. And okay, so before start, I hope everyone is safe and keeping themselves healthy in this pandemic situation of COVID-19. Okay, starting with our new session, that is initial project setup with Tricentis Tosca, right? So when we talk about project setups, there are two verticals we have identified with which people talk about, that we are going to start with the setup, or we are going to start with the tool. So these two tracks or two verticals are nothing but, one is infrastructure. Everyone keeps making this thing highlighted whenever they wanted to start something with Tosca. And the unknown side of that coin is implementation. That also we are going to talk about today. So when we talk about the big picture of the complete project setup, infrastructure is majorly differentiated, or segregated into multiple components. The very first is the licensing. The next one is the Tosca commander and the components, that is set up an installation of them. The next one is repository setup, which kind of repository you want and what kind of project you are going to develop on that. And the last but not the least is the user management, which is extremely crucial when we talk about the project setup. If we talk about implementation, there are a few things which we should consider in the very first steps or initial steps of the project implementation, that is following the correct folder structure. RBTA, that is risk-based test automation, about which Roman talked about just a while ago. The next is reusable test step block and configuration parameters. When we talk about RTBs, and when we talk about Tosca, we always talk about the reusability of the artifacts, right? So RTB and CP is one of the part of it, and the next one is production, that what exactly you're going to develop and how, right? So let's get started with the infrastructure part. Ankush, next slide, please. Correct. So when we talk about the licensing, it is majorly divided into three parts. That is cloud licenses, on-premise, that is concurrent. We used to know it earlier. The local machine, that is node lock. So basically, when we see that we have cloud licenses as well, so what does that mean, right? So Tricentis provide cloud licenses to the customer who have their flexible networks, or they're okay to connect to the cloud licenses or the cloud connectivity with Tricentis Cloud. So in that case, whatever licenses or the number of licenses customer gets or purchases, we put those licenses or those number of licenses on the Tricentis Cloud, and from that the customer can connect to the cloud and avail the licenses. Before talking regarding the on-premise or concurrent, I would like to talk about the local machine or the node lock licenses we have. So node lock license is also availability or type of licenses where we can designate one particular license to that particular machine. Advantage is that that license will always be available for that person who will be using that system, and that's great because you do not get that much frequent availability of licenses on when you use on-premise or concurrent. But the disadvantage of node lock license or local machine is you cannot provide that license, or another person cannot use that license or avail it again, right? Because that license is specifically for that particular machine. Correct. So that is cloud and node lock for us. The next one and the important one is on-premise or the concurrent, we call it as. So on-premise license is nothing but we set up a license server on intranet where customer or partner can avail it from their own networks, right? So in on-premise license there are majorly two different components. One is online and offline. So that is just a flavor of the same license server, but the online license server is majorly connected to the Tricentis cloud continuously, so that it can sync and keep the track record of the license usage. Where on the other hand, offline is something which has the licenses but is not connected to the cloud license or the cloud server of Tricentis, because customers do not want to get in touch with the outside networks, so they can still use the licenses deployed on the license server with their intranet and not required to connect to the internet that is outside the world, right? So on-premise online is what we recommend, because it gives you a good amount of performance, because over the period of time offline gets a bit slower because it contains those local files, where on the other hand online keeps on improving its performance. Okay, so that's all about licensing. And the last part is both on-premise online and offline both support HTTP and HTTPS. So in case some customer partner wants to go with HTTPS, then we can do that, and that's only depending on some simple certificate installation along with the license server. So that's all about licensing. We'll move on to the next part of it. That is a Tosca Commander repository creation. So since we already talked about licensing, the next part is where to use those licenses, right? So the very first component we are supposed to have on our system is the Tosca Commander, correct? So there are two ways to install a Tosca Commander. Attended mode, where you can install your Tosca Commander on your system by your own, and the another way is unattended. So in case you have hundreds of machines where you are supposed to install the Tosca at a single time or at a same instant, then you don't need to go and on each machine individually and install it or perform the installation, right? So in that case we use a command line, or sorry, a command prompt with some commands, and we trigger the utility which packages the application, correct? So every enterprises have their own package utilities where they package application and deploy them on different machines. So what we do is we trigger that utility. It deploys the complete software on that particular or those number of machines, and it will get the installation done. So that's how you can perform the unattended installation of that particular component, or in fact a Tosca Commander, right? So these two ways of installation are done. Then the next part is you are supposed to create artifacts in Tosca Commander, correct? So for that you'll need Workspace, and Workspace is nothing but there are two ways of creating a workspace or having a workspace in your system. One is single user workspace, and one is multi-user workspace. So the single user is only available for one person at a time, we can say that, because it's again created on a local machine. It have that DB file on that particular local machine, and only one person or only that user of the machine will be able to avail or work on that repository or workspace. Wherein on the other hand, multi-user workspace we can create, and that DB file which got created with the help of Workspace or with Workspace is basically we are using a DB outside of that local machine, correct? So every enterprise have the separate database, and we are leveraging the same database to store the artifacts. So when we create a database on or when we are utilizing the database which is already available, we just need to connect to the database with the help of connection string, and you'll be able to put and pull the artifacts from your Tosca command. So for this, my colleague Ankush will share his screen and will demonstrate that how exactly we are supposed to create these two workspaces or connect them.
Perfect, Vedant. Basically, as Vedant mentioned, we have two types of workspaces. One is single user and another is the multi-user workspace. Like, let us see how we can create those workspaces in Tosca very quickly. So as you can see, this is the home page, home screen of the Tosca Commander. When you open install Tosca Commander and open it, this is something the Tosca Commander looks like. So then you can open up your workspace. So, but before opening that workspace, we basically have to create it. So for creating, we just go to project and we have this option of new. So we just click on new and it will throw us a pop-up of creating the new workspace. So now here's a trick that how we need to basically create the workspace, whether it's a single user or whether it's a multi-user. So for a single user, if you see this drop down select type of repository, you will find multiple options present over here. So the first one, which is auto selected, is the none create single user workspace. So basically, if you have selected this option, so it will automatically create a workspace which is a single user workspace. That means only a single user would be able to work on that particular workspace. So this is local to basically your system, and no one else would be able to share your artifacts or see your artifacts. So for that matter, you'll only be able to see that. So once we are clicked on this none create single user workspace, we just need to provide the workspace name. That is, say for example, I'm giving some dummy name, and it automatically saves your workspace in this default location. But if you want to change this default location, you can anytime change it from this ellipse, and you can give your suitable path. But as your Tosca projects might be installed on C drive itself at the time of installation, so it's better if we go. It's like best practice if you go with the same default path. But you have that option anytime to change it to some other directory or some other even drive itself. Yeah. So then you will give some suitable name as per your understanding, and then you can just click on the use workspace template. So what basically this workspace template includes, so it will just include one TSU file, which is nothing but a subset file, you can say, which Tricentis provides for importing the artifacts that some standard modules, some standard test cases that we already have. So for that, we can use this workspace template, and it will automatically get imported when we are creating the workspace. So, and then we can click on OK button, and it will automatically create a workspace for us. That's a single user workspace. Now coming to the multi-user workspace, so we have the other options. So for all these other options, we have these as the multi-user workspace. So we have the Tricentis cloud repository also, which you can leverage for creating the multi-user workspace. And apart from that, we have these four different options or four different databases that Tricentis Tosca supports for creating the multi-user workspace. So first is SQLite, then Oracle, MS SQL Server, and DB2. So you can whatever database you are having with your enterprise with you, so you can make use of that. Create a database inside your that particular database, create a specific instance, and then use it over here. So if, say for example, I'm using MS SQL Server, so I'll just select this, and the schema is optional, so don't need to put it. So the most important thing over here while using the multi-user workspace is that we need to get the connection string. So for the connection string, so if you click on this question mark symbol, you will find the syntax that what exactly needs to be provided for the connection string. So here we need to provide the four different options. One is server details, the database details, then the user ID, and the password. So server details is nothing but where your database is basically hosted. So on whichever server machine this database is hosted, so you can just take the IP address of or the host name of that particular machine and put it over here. Similarly, inside the database, you will have one database instance created. Say for example, for MS SQL Server, you have created one database. So whatever the database name is, so you just need to provide the database name over here. And then the user ID through which you connect to that particular database, you have to provide it over here in the user ID, and then again the password. So you will provide the exact password, and then you can click on test connection, and you will get the message here that connection is valid if all the details are provided perfectly fine. And apart from this giving the details of the connection string, we have the provision that we can give the encrypted string. So we can basically using admin login, so we can get the connection string, and then we can paste that connection string over here, replace this all with that connection string, and then click on test connection. So that's also the other way around to test your connection with the database, that whether Tosca is able to perfectly connect to that particular database or not. So that's the first thing. Then once the test connection connection is valid, then you can move to the next option. You can again give the name of the workspace, and this time you can you don't have the workspace template. If you will uncheck this, because I've checked this, that's why I'm not getting the option. So you can uncheck this, and you can because if I have the existing repository in place, then I can't use the workspace template because I may have already exported it. But now if I'm unchecking this, that means my repository doesn't exist yet, so it will automatically try to create that repository, and then create it from scratch, and then use this workspace template, whatever we have mentioned over here. Again, if I click on it, it will automatically take us to the standard.tsu file and export it. So that's how we basically create the multi-user or single user workspace, and then we have to click on OK. It will automatically create it. Yeah, for multi-user workspace, it takes a bit of time because it has to interact with the database, export the artifacts, import it. So it has to make the connection. So it takes a bit of extra time to create it. So yeah, it will show you the progress also in the bar. Yeah, so that's overall how we basically create the single user or multi-user workspace. So coming back to slides, so now again, the most important functionality that Tosca provides is the user management. So this should also be considered as a most important aspect when we are trying to set up the Tosca in the enterprise from the very scratch. Why this is very important? Because if someone has created some artifacts, so he or she, that person, the tester, should be able to basically open Tosca Commander using his or her name, and should be able to log into Tosca Commander and then create the artifacts or edit the artifacts, whatever the user needs to do. So for that functionality, Tosca provides a user management section in which you can basically create the users. So basically, the Tosca user management part of Tosca will basically help you in creating the users. It will help you in activating the users. It will help you in deactivating the users. Also, then it would be able to help you in assigning users to the user group. So what exactly is a user group? I'll come in a bit to that. So then it will also be able to, you'll also be able to set the passwords for your users, whichever you have created. So what basically is a user group? User group is basically a group of users which will basically help you define the users, what they are allowed to see or modify. What exactly means by see or modify is like if you're creating a particular user group, so Tosca will provide you a particular Tosca will give you a functionality that you, using that user group, you will be able to restrict the viewing groups or owning groups. So what does viewing group or owning group exactly mean? It's like that what are the artifacts that you need to see, or what are the artifacts you need to change or you need to edit. So for that, we have the owning group and viewing group. Using these user groups, whatever you see, the user groups, whatever are created. So using these user groups, you would be able to restrict the owning and viewing groups. So you will not be able to directly create the users over here. You have to specifically, first of all, create the user group. Then inside that user group only, you would be able to create the users. So yeah, just let me allow to show you this user management group. So if I see the Tosca, then this is the user management section, which you can only see on the project root folder. And if you are not the admin, then you definitely would not be able to see the user management section. So only users who are admin would be able to see this section of Tosca. So now if you right click on the project root folder, you can see the create user group. So you can say test user group. Okay, so now I've created this user group. Now only I can create the user over here. Okay, say for example, I would create quickly 2 users. Okay, so this is how we can create the user group and how we can include the users. So now if you might have observed one thing, whatever users I created here, those were automatically came up inside this all user group, all users user group. So basically, what does that mean? That means this all users user group has all the users, whatever you are creating, irrespective of whether it's a separate user group or it's inside this user only. So inside this all user section, user group only. So whatever users you are creating inside separate user group also, that those all will be included inside the all users. So this is the important thing. And now if you want to make some user as admin, so by default, Tosca provides you with one user, which is the admin user. But if you want to make some user admin, so you can drag and drop that user either from all users, or you can directly drag it from here also. So once I drag and drop it on the admins, it will automatically make that user as admin. So what is the admin user? Admin user basically has nothing. It's like the user which has the extended privileges. So you'll be able to see some extended privileges which admin user only has, and which normal Tosca user would not be having. Okay, let's move again to the presentation. So yeah, so now let's talk something about how many users you can create, what are the types of users that you would be able to create in Tosca. So basically Tosca basically gives you the functionality that you will be able to create two users. So what are those two users? One, I already showed you that whatever users we created right now were the users that are the Tosca users. So they basically are the Tosca users. And the second part is the LDAP user. So basically those are the users which are basically integrated with your Active Directory. So Tosca basically integrates with the Active Directory, and it fetches all the users those are present inside that Active Directory, and you would be able to see all the users inside the user management section of Tosca. Then again, it depends on the admin, that whether admin wants to give admin privileges to those LDAP users also or not. So it all depends how you have basically created your users, where your users are basically lying. So if they're lying in the admin user group, then you would be able to basically see them as an admin. You have the extended privileges, but if you don't put them in the admin user group, then you will not be able to have them the admin privileges. So apart from that, if you see this enable section, there's nothing but where you can activate, disable, or enable the users. So for that, you have this enabled column. So for set results, you would basically be able to those users whichever are whichever have the tick symbol with respect to them. So those users would be able to basically set the results as passed or failed for your execution lists. And then the level is like you have some with respect to those users. So you have the 3 levels. If I can show you quickly, so you have the 3 levels, that is basic, advanced, and expert. So these are nothing but the levels of the users with respect to the privileges that have. So expert user have all the privileges, advanced have some less, and basic has only the basic privileges. Okay, so coming back to presentation, yeah, so this was from the user management part. So how you can basically manage your users, whether they're the Tosca users, whether they're the LDAP users. So this is how you can basically integrate your users, and how you can create your users. And also one more thing for the LDAP user is like when LDAP user gets created, so when the next time the user who's synced to the who is basically in that LDAP will, when that same person will be opening Tosca Commander the next time, that user will be basically able to log into Tosca using his or her LDAP user. So then at that time the user has a privilege that he or she can use open Tosca or log in Tosca through the Tosca user also, as well as the LDAP user also. So but as considering the security and compliance, I've seen some customers basically sticking only to the Active Directory users, that's LDAP users. So they are not they are basically restricted to use Tosca users. So for those we highly recommend using the LDAP users, wherein they can just they can log in through the LDAP user, and they don't need to provide the password because they're already logged into the systems using their LDAP account only, and they would be able to seamlessly log into Tosca. Okay, yeah, that was all from user management. Oh yeah, over to you, Vedant.
Sure, thanks, Ankush. I tried to answer as much as questions possible in the chat, but I think you guys all are on fire. So yeah, we'll answer them after this session. So the next part is thanks, Ankush, for considering or explaining the user management. Moving on to the next part, that is folder structure. Since we already completed our infrastructure part, because till user management everybody is aware of it, or everybody is okay with the project setup, but these are the next pointers, or topics which remains untalked. So we'll be touching on them as well. So folder structure. So when we start our implementation, or when we start working with Tosca, in the initial stage, if we make sure that we are following this thing as a best practices and as a part of your initial days, then it is gonna help you in the long term and will give you easy days in maintenance as well. Okay, so let's talk about the folder structure first. identification of business functions, right? So you'll need to identify that what kind of regression suite or automation suite you want in your system or in your Tosca. You want it on a sprint approach, whether you can develop the artifact on sprint basis wherever required. You can develop a functionality and test cases for that, and then you can execute, or you can execute or you can develop the complete test suite depending on their functionality, on the functionality manner, right? That is on functionality classification. So for example, in my current project where I'm working on is we have implemented the functionality classification approach, and which is recommended as well, so that you cannot redundant the artifacts which you have already created, and make good use of them without making your repository heavy. You just need to identify the high level functionalities, and on the basis of that you can develop your test cases, whatever is designed or decided. And likewise, you'll also need to structureize your sub functionalities in your folder structure, so that it will be very quick to maintain in future. And in case you wanted to do modify or add on something in that functionalities or test cases, then you can easily find out them and reach out to them and find out and modify, right? So this is all about the folder structure. So you should maintain functionality classification folder structure, which will be a bit helpful and easy to understand, right? Next slide, Ankush. Okay, so inside a folder structure, there is another or the one more thing, that is a naming convention. So how you should name your artifacts, or how should you name your test cases or folders, right? So as discussed or as mentioned in the last slide, that you should always follow the functionality approach. That means whatever folder you're creating or whatever test case you're creating, the name of that artifact should be business relatable, so that anyone. So for example, in my test case 1.1.1, the name is pretty simple, right? Confirming not signed in. So the person or the BA who's looking at your test suite will be able to understand that what is this test case is about, correct? And what should be inside your test case is a defined structure or a specific structure which you are following complete your development or complete your Tosca test suite, right? So we're dividing the complete test case in three different parts. That is precondition, process, and post-condition, right? So precondition is nothing but a prerequisite required for your scenario or functional flow for the automation. Process is nothing but all the validation and steps towards the validation. And post-condition is nothing but resetting your environment, or closing your complete environment, whatever you have opened or started. So this structure is should be followed everywhere, because this will also help you in maintaining your complete test suite going forward. Because in case there are some bulk changes you wanted to perform, you can simply write a TQL query and find out the process or precondition folder, and you can modify that particular thing, right? So yeah, so you should follow the perfect naming convention, which is business relatable, and there's three folders or three subfolders should be there in every test case. Next slide, please. So we talked about test cases folder structure, right? Now we'll also have a look towards modules, execution, and test case design sections. So in module section, you should always classify your modules or segregate your modules depending on their functionalities. So for example, I have to go through 6 different applications to perform one functional flow, right? So in my modules section or in my modules folder, I'll create subfolders with the name of those applications, and I'll rename the modules as well, so that whatever or whenever I'm supposed to find one module or to rescan something, I'll be easily able to go through it and can rescan or update or modify, right? Going back or going to the execution section, there are two ways again. Either you can go with the functionality wise, or you can go sprint wise. But when we talk about test case section, functionality wise is the more preferred approach or the recommended approach, because you cannot redundant your artifacts which created by someone else or someone of your colleague. But in execution section, you can both you can go either way. Either you can go with a sprint approach, where you can just pull the artifacts from test case section and design your complete sprint and execute it, or else you can go with the functionality approach, which we have done in this project or in the screenshot. That is pulling all the functionalities and selecting whatever you want to you're supposed to execute, and just trigger the execution. And in TCD section, it's pretty much straightforward as like a test case section. That is, you're supposed to segregate all your test sheets depending on their functionalities or the business areas, and you can maintain them. One more thing, you should also consider that the naming convention inside a TCD or the test case design sheet, that is, it should be clearly and easily understandable, so that the third person who will be joining your team, or someone wants to have a look at it, should be able to understand that what exactly that test sheet is for, and what are the scenarios or instances created inside it. Okay, great. We'll move on to the next slide. And this is a blessing to Tosca, that is recovery and cleanup scenario, right? So a recovery scenario will get triggered whenever expected or unexpected failure happens in when you're triggering the execution or in between of your execution. So it will just reset your complete, so trigger recovery scenario will try to recover the complete flow as much as possible. If it fails, then it will trigger the cleanup scenario. And as you all know, that cleanup scenario will reset or clean your complete environment or whatever artifacts you have opened between that executional flow. The preferred or recommended approach of designing or keeping your recovery scenario as try to keep it as optimized as possible and as much as upper level or higher level as possible, because it will be easy to maintain in going further then. But in this case, if you can have a look at this screenshot, you can see that there are multiple recovery scenarios. Some of them are in the folder and some of them are at the parent level, right? So this is because considering the customer requirement or the functional requirement, we have developed recovery scenarios specifically for some of the test cases, and there are parent recovery scenario as well, which will execute in all those steps wherever required. So yeah, you can also create recovery scenario inside the test case, but as I said, you should keep it as much optimized as possible and keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, you should have a recovery scenario in all your test cases or all your complete regression suite. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Vedant. Yeah, I think definitely the folder structuring and recovery scenarios and cleanup scenario definitely makes a lot of sense when you're starting the project, and when you have just kick-started the project, and you need to define the folder structuring. You need to define wherever you need to create the artifacts and all. Yeah. Moving to the next topic, that's the most important and most interesting topic that I find in Tosca is risk-based testing automation. So we do in Tosca we do support risk-based testing. What does that exactly mean? Risk-based testing is nothing but where we can prioritize our risks and emphasize on our appropriate tests through the requirements that we have already defined. So if you can see, this is the screenshot of the requirement section, wherein we have placed all the requirements that are with respect to the project, and we have basically jotted all the requirements over there. And in for some of the requirements, we have already raised the sub requirements also, which are like covering all the requirements. So now like, why this risk-based testing? So like sometimes in some projects we have seen that there's an insufficient time, or the team doesn't have a lot of time to basically focus on all the test cases and get all the test cases covered from the functionality perspective. So in those cases, this risk-based testing automation basically helps a lot, which basically wherein we can basically test the functionalities which are having the highest impact, and the probability of failure is also highest. So for those functionalities, we can basically design our requirement set, as you can see, and inside the requirements we can basically create all the requirements wherein we can provide this frequency class and damage class. So in a nutshell, if I say about the frequency class and damage class, it's nothing but how frequently a particular requirement is getting used in your business processes, and what is the damage that it's basically causing to your business. So like, with the help of your business team, with the help of your business analysts, with a business team, you can basically figure out what is the frequency class and damage class of those particular requirements. So you can define these two sections for all your requirements. So once this is done, then in Tosca you will automatically be able to see that you will get some weight with respect to whatever you have defined in the frequency and the damage class. So once you have the weight, then you would be able to see this contribution. So on the basis of the weight that whatever you have provided, you will be getting the contribution with respect to those requirements. So once you have got this contribution, so you, on that on this column basis, you would be able to differentiate that which requirement is basically having the more contribution. So what does that exactly mean? Say for example, inside this requirement standard sales order, I have these all sub requirements. So what so inside in these sub requirements, I see that this first requirement is holding my most of the contribution. That means it's having the highest contribution among all the requirements. That means on the basis of weight and frequency class and damage class, whatever I have provided with the help of a business team, this is having the most important contribution in my business process. That means I need to test this particular functionality the most, so that my most of the risk is getting covered over there, so that my this particular functionality, whatever risk it's creating for my business, that is getting tested the most. So so then we would basically focus on these particular requirements, and then on the basis of these requirements, we'll create a test case of these requirements with respect to these requirements and test them the most. So just yeah once this part is done, once we have already came to know that which are the requirements that are like having the most risk, and which are the requirements that are covering that has the most contribution, and we can test them the most, and we can start creating the test cases for those functionalities only, so that our most of the business risks are getting covered. So this is one part, how requirement section or risk-based testing basically helps us to prioritize our tests, and test the most risky functionalities at the earliest. Then the second approach, added advantage what risk-based testing basically provides us, or the requirement section basically provides us, is like you can basically link your test cases or test sheets or the execution lists with these requirement section. So basically, if you see this demo web shop, this is a requirement set wherein we have these 5 different requirements. So like with the help of my business team, I have already provided some frequency class and damage class. So Tricentis highly recommends that keep these numbers as low as possible from 0 to 5 itself, so that we don't have the large calculation in place for the weight. So that's the only reason why like we recommend keeping these numbers in the range of 0 to 5, but it should be uniform. If you're keeping 0 to 5, it should be for every requirement, it should be 0 to 5 itself. So now once this is created, now we have all the requirements in place. We have the risk-based testing, wherein we have prioritized our tests the most, that which are our risky test cases. We have tested them the most. Now once they have been created, then we can link those test cases rather over here in the requirement section. So as you can see in this execution section, we can see that we have some execution list linked over here in the requirement set. So once we have linked this, so this execution state will have something to show to us. So like it's showing that for this particular requirement register, we are having the execution state of 100%, and that to green. That means whatever test cases we have created for this particular requirement is basically all in green, and we are able to see we have basically executed all the test cases, and they are passed successfully. Similarly, for the other requirement, that's login, we see some of the 6% has got failed. That means some sort of test cases have failed for this particular requirement. Likewise, for the other 2 requirements, I see nothing has been executed, and for the last requirement, I see that 20% has been failed. So considering all these in place, we see for the whole requirement set, we see this is the overall execution. That means the overall 58% of the execution state is in green, then 5% is in red, and 37% has not been executed. So
Ankush,
this is
just
how
one
we
thing.
can.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
please make it a bit faster? We are way over time. Sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
but please continue and just try to finish it quickly. Thank you.
Sure, Jason. Yeah. Okay, so this is how we can get the execution state. So considering the coverage specified, coverage executed, test case design coverage. So these are nothing but the different parameters. Whatever we have linked to our requirements, we can basically get the different parameters. So this risk-based testing approach here would basically give us a holistic view of our all the requirements that are getting covered, of all the test cases that we have created, of all the execution lists. So this will give us the holistic view that what has been executed, what has not been executed, how much how much has been completed, how much has not been completed, what is in progress. So all this we would be able to see from this section. That is the most important other aspect of the requirement section that we would be able to basically get from the requirement section. Yeah. So yeah, coming to the next topic. So then we have the test configuration parameters. So basically, these are the parameters which you can set for the Tosca objects, specifically like for the test cases, for the execution lists, wherein you can basically you can say there are sort of variables which you can declare initially on top of your on the parent level, and then you can use those variables in your test cases. Say for example, if I have the login and password as my two parameters which I need to basically pass for my multiple test cases in that particular parent folder. So I have like 20 set of test cases where I need to use it. So I'll not every time use those parameters and call get the value and put it over there in the test case. So basically it basically helps. It basically has the chance, that probability, that it will create some spelling mistakes for me, or I have to every time call them. So basically, instead of using that, what I can do, I can use my I can create my test configuration parameters, and then I'll just create them on the parent level, and then I can call them directly on my test cases level, wherein it will automatically fetch the data. So one most important advantage here is that if in future I have to change these passwords or usernames, I don't have to every time go to my each and every test case to change it. So I'll just change it on my parent level, where I have put it in the form of configuration parameter, and it will automatically reflect in all the test cases. So likewise, these parameters are not only specific to the values that we need to provide to the application or to the test cases. These can be some parameters also, like browser, wherein we need to basically means these are not like some parameters which are required for in the test case. These are basically some parameters which are helpful for execution of the test cases, or maybe in some other way around we can get used. So the TCPs can be like which we can call in our test cases, or which would be helpful for our execution, or which will be helpful for using in that execution, like the example browser Internet Explorer. So it will basically help us in executing the test case in a particular browser. So rather than calling it, it will be helpful. It will be helpful for us in executing. Likewise, in this test case, we have provided Chrome, so it will execute on Chrome.
Ankush, try to finish it in next 1 or 2 minutes, please.
Sure.
I'll
Sure. I
request for
think
that.
yeah, we have a couple of slides only, so yeah.
The next one is the last slide, Ankush.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vedant.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
Vedant,
to talk about the last slide, the reusable tester block, this is nothing but a set of test steps which you are going to perform again and again and again. So better you identify this in the very initial steps of your implementation or engagement, so that you can maintain and manage those libraries in your test suite. And going forward, everyone can have a look at the libraries available for those processes, and if there are any, they can simply use it. So this will reduce the redundancy between the artifacts and helps keeping the repository lightweight and optimized. So yeah, that's what all about from the technical perspective. The next slide is real world challenges, was considering the time availability, and we cannot cover this, but yeah, the world is waiting for you to with bigger challenges, and be ready for that with Tasca.
Thank you,
In
Ankush.
case you
Thank
wanted
you,
to,
Vedant, very much.
sure.
And we'll take the Q&A. We'll take the most questions will be answered in the next session. So next session is also on Tosca and the different Tricentis tools that we are offering. So collaboration at the speed of DevOps is the next session. We will take all the questions which are questioned in this session in the next session. So with respect to the time, I'll have to make a hard stop on this session. Thank you very much, Ankush and Vedant, very much
thank you.
for doing the session. I'll quickly make myself a presenter, and yes, I have something for you guys. Don't just leave the webinar, Ankush and Vedant. You all can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Yes, Ankush. Thanks again, Ankush. Thanks for doing the session, and we are very happy to share this with you, the certificate of appreciation for Ankush, and
Thank you.
also for Vedant. Thanks both of you for doing the session.